Okay, we're going to begin. The very simple service plan I have is I'll have the chalice lighting, and then we'll sing This Little Light of Mine, 118. So you might want to grab a hymn, or you may know that. But anyway, you can remain seated for that, I would think. 118. And then we're going to share tributes. I'll start with one I got in email, and then I'll invite whoever wants to speak briefly their words of love to Anne. So to begin with the chalice lighting, we often say that the chalice is a rich symbol of many meanings. And one of the meanings it has for us is the light we have found in people and in each other. So we light the chalice lighting now, underlining the light that we found in Anne and will keep. I figured it out. All right, 118, this little light. Let's remain seated because you've been standing. 118.
Yes.
My point, of course, in having us gather like this is we're also Anne's family. Now, there were no family members around to run this by or to include, but we're her family too, so we needed to do this. Say words of love, words of tribute. I'll say briefly that Anne wasn't here when I started. When I started was in '09. She was, I think, in New Jersey, where she had moved for some period of time. I started hearing that Anne is coming back. I didn't know who Anne was really, but I heard that she was coming back. And when she came back, people were really happy to have her back because she had been a really important part of the congregation. Now, in my first term here, she was very resourceful in giving me thoughts about what the church had been, the congregation had been, her role in it and the roles of others in it. She would come to the office and just tell me things that she thought would be useful, and they were useful. She had a terrific wit about her, as you all knew. She could be pretty down to earth, earthy, we could say. She wouldn't be at all put off by saying, "Bitch goddess success" in the pulpit. But she didn't have a prudish bone in her body that I knew of anyway. Anyway, the hard part is knowing that she's now in our love and in our memory. But she was with us for a long time, and her guidance will be with us for a long time. Now, I invited people to send me tributes, and the one I got was from Deb Harris. Deb is watching. I'm going to say that Deb Harris is our newest snowbird, because she tells us she might well be back here after some time up there. We can hope. Anyhow, Deb Harris's thoughts on Anne. There are people who come into your life, and from the moment you meet them, you feel an instant connection with them, as if they're family or a beloved friend. I felt that way when I met Anne. As a newcomer to TCUUC many years ago, she reached out and spent time talking to me, something she did with many visitors. It was in part because of Anne's warmth and friendliness that I was encouraged to come back each Sunday. Over the years, I was fortunate to spend time with her for lunches, movies, or driving her to and from church toward the end of her time in Florida. She could talk about anything: politics, religion, social issues, current events, with insight and knowledge gained from her avid reading of the New York Times and other papers. She could tell wonderful stories of her time as a nurse, of her children's growing up, of her summers at Star Island, of her early years with Yashi, of her granddaughters. She gave wonderful advice. When I was about to have surgery several years ago, she went out of her way to come to my house to tell me what I needed to do afterwards. When Francisco and I went to help her put up shelves and unpack in her assisted living facility the photos and awards and artifacts she had told of such a full, rich, and varied life. Anne had a wicked sense of humor and always surprised me, like the time we were heading into a movie and she hoped it was rated R and not PG. Anne was a model example of how to stay young at heart while aging with grace, being open to new people and experiences, to love, being kind and generous to all, not being afraid of change or challenges. I admired her and loved her and am so thankful to have known her. Which reminds me of, thank you, Deb Harris, reminds me of one more thing. I kid Ken Texera about being our token Buddhist in the congregation. Anne was like our designated Jew. You know, she explained things about Judaism when we wanted to know more about Hanukkah or anything, and she loved talking about her background. So anyway, who else? Words of tribute of love. You don't need to go on as I did. Yeah, I'll go ahead, Suzanne. You want to use this? You want to shout? You can use that.
Use the mic.
Okay, you guys know me, Suzanne. I first got to know Anne about 7 years ago, and as Debbie it was who wrote that tribute, I had the same experience. As a new person, she talked to me, and we realized that we felt that connection. But I think she just had something about her. She could connect with just about anybody. It was amazing. And I had the same experience of, if I would ask her for advice or input on something, there was always a pearl of wisdom in there. And I love her, and I miss her so much. I miss not seeing her on Sunday. There were times when I just didn't come because I knew I wasn't going to see her. And I know that's a terrible thing to say, but I've been really grieving for her, and I'm sure everyone else has too. So God bless you. I hope you're here in spirit today, Anne. Thanks.
That's why we're meeting. Okay. You want to be next?
Yes, I do. I loved Ann. She was the kind of person you could just go up to and start talking about anything and would have a nice conversation, and she just felt like an old friend from the first time I met her. But the memory I share, and I'll never forget, was that night in Las Vegas. It was
Okay, Bob stole part of what I was going to say because I bonded with us over our Jewish heritage. Of course, she knew a lot about it and I knew nothing, so that was really tough because I always had to go to Ann. Ann, what am I supposed to say now? Because I wasn't a good student in Temple or in Sunday school, so I never paid attention. But she was such a spirit in this church, such a special person, and she was a giver and a lovely, lovely woman. And her path was always a little different, and she went on a lot of different paths, but she always was kind and loving.
She touched a number of people who had Judaism in their background. Judy, did you and Jill also have Judaism in your background? Because I know when I first came here the second time, I didn't know you two, and we got to talking, and maybe it was Jill or you who told me the Judaism was a connection with Ann immediately, and it's with a number of people here. Who else? Pat?
I just have to follow because of the kindness that Ronnie spoke of. Yes, that's true. She always was kind, but she could be very direct. And when she told me I needed to lose weight, I spent the next year losing 30 pounds. Anne, where are you when I need you again?
Who else? Okay, Linda.
Ann knew everybody. And so after we started working with the family in Indiantown, I connected with Ann and said, well, we're going to be driving out there to visit the family with the UUSC project. And she said, oh, we'll have lunch. And I said, great, where should we eat? At the taco truck. So we would meet at the truck, and we'd eat there. And then, because Ann didn't know where, she'd follow us over. And so one of the days we're standing outside with the whole family, and this big SUV drives up, and this big black lady jumps out and goes, Ann. And Ann goes, oh, there's Jackie. She's the mayor of Indiantown. And she's going like, I go, Ann, she just knew everybody. And the last time I saw her, it was interesting, the serendipity. I was going to drive her back out after a movie. And we dropped Ann off at home, and Citrus was closer. And I said, I'll take you back out on Citrus. And we got out there, and they were working on it, and the intersection was closed. And I went, no, we have to go. So we had to go all the way around and come back here. And it was so wonderful because I had a whole hour with her. And it was just like everyone said, she was so smart. She knew everything. She was so alert. And I remember thinking, I want to be that way when I'm 93, you know. And I think we both knew it did turn out to be the last time. And it was just, really special to have all that time. And even Yashi was really alert. When we got to the house, he got me some water. And then he said, when you back out, don't hit the car across the drive. And I thought, he's still pretty alert too, so thank you.
What an interesting couple, Yashi and Ann. Who else?
Okay. I wasn't here early on when Ann was here. I came to the church because of Judith. And when she came back, and then I went away for a while because I wasn't happy with church politics. And then I came back. And so as soon as I came back, a certain person recruited me to be on membership. And I didn't remember who anybody was, so I went to Ann one day after the service, and I said, Ann, could you help me figure out who some of these people are? She took the directory out of my hand, and she went, everybody on the list, this is where they came from, this is, which was drinking out of a fire hose. I remembered very little of that except that she was the one to go to talk. So more recent memories, the Gretchen Huff was the original librarian founder of this church. And Judith was her employee at first, and then friend. And so when we learned that Gretchen Huff was dying of cancer in Maine, we took a month and we went up to visit with her, which was a lovely visit. But on the way, we stopped at Ferry Beach, which is where Anne was working as a nurse for the summer, and surprised her. And that was a delightful memory. She kept reminding of us of that years later. So, and then much more recently, Deb and I and Judith went out to her house as her daughter was they were leaving the next day. And Anne was really alert, and she was involved in the conversations. I have some nice photos of her, and she ate. She hadn't been eating, she ate. That was a lovely last lucid moment. But once, when Deb was getting ready to leave Vero Beach to go further north, Judith and David and Stan and I went up to visit with Deb. So while we were all there together, we got her on video call, and we all talked to her, and we showed her pictures of the dogs because she loved Zoe, and she recognized who we were, and she was alert. So on her birthday, I called her, and I had trouble getting through to her daughter, and her daughter said, "Wait a minute, hospice is here," and then she got back. So I was actually calling at the moment that she was leaving life. But she was fascinating and wonderful and intelligent and humorous and down to earth and all of those things. Great memories.
We want to be like her when we grow up.
Yes, we do.
Judy.
Just very briefly, because all of the above, right? I mean, I don't need to repeat all of that, which I totally relate to, but she was also a marvelous storyteller. I was so envious of that because I can't even remember right now what I intended to say, right? And she loved the opera. And so, yeah, so we shared that love. So we went to live at the Met, that you can go to the movie theater, and she loved that, and she also loved how cushy those theater seats were, and she commented on that. Yeah, so miss her terribly.
Over here. And then you.
I almost cried when Tia was speaking last because losing Anne was hard. She was so much fun. It took me a long time to understand her sense of humor. It was so dry. Early on, she was over to my house, and I said, "Oh, we have this huge collection of alcohol that we never touch anymore." And she said, "Oh, well, let's have a party and let's take a sample of everything you have." Of course, she didn't drink. It was just part of how much fun she was. People have talked of how generous her spirit was. Well, also, not only would she always jump in to volunteer for whatever was going on here, she was also very quick with her checkbook. She just, it was, the church was so much a part of her. She and Yashi actually lived a fairly modest life, and she was so generous, just all the way around. And she did manage to catch some of our own spirits, and of course she knew my signature was good vibes, and there's a pillow from her.
Regina.
I met Anne, I guess about 8 years ago in the book club. her and Yashi used to come to the book club, and that's where I met her. And Anne, I think when I think about Anne, I think that there's just was nobody like her. She was Anne. You know, there was her personality and who she was just, there was no one like her. She was all those things that everybody has said, but she just had her own, somebody said that she had her own way of thinking about things and relating to things, and she was really such a kind person. And she did, I guess she gave me something one time too, and I wanted to share it. She knew that I was Irish. And I guess she was going through her maybe sorting things out and giving things. So she gave me this shawl that has, you know, Irish things on it. So she is, yeah, she was really special. And I think a lot of us did look up to her as you know, how to age well, how to stay. And she could be real serious and really knowledgeable, but she could also laugh at herself. You know, she knew how to do that. So yeah, she was a wonderful lady.
I have to say too, she and I shared the love of toy poodleism.
Anybody else?
Yes, Anne, all right. I met her just as soon as she had retired and moved to Florida and had just bought the place out in Indiantown. And she was very, very concerned about her health. I don't know if any of you really remember her at that time, but she was as wide as she was tall. And she went on this surgery diet, took care of herself. And a year or so later, she said, "Oh, Judith, guess what I've done?" I said, "What have you done, Anne?" She, of course, looked great. "Wow, I always wanted to go to the Elephant thrift store in Palm Beach and buy those expensive size 8 and size 10 clothes that all those rich ladies wear." And I always loved seeing what she had on when she came to church, because she had a real flair for clothes. Yeah.
Anyone else? Roger and then David.
I met Ann in the middle of my terms, I guess, but I had a small business going, so to speak. When I came to the church, I saw how many people needed help, and I put a little squib in the newsletter at the time that I would do handyman work for $10 an hour. And I had a full docket real quick. But Ann, after I'd done some work at a hair place down in Indiantown, she said, "You got to raise your prices." She was just a great person. No two ways about it.
There's a job for you now if you want to do it too.
I remember Anne telling me how they came to buy property here. As you know, she was a nurse, and she had come down to Florida on some kind of, not a secondment, but I think she had a relatively short-term contract down here. And she was down here, and Yashi, I'm not sure which, was in Boston, and I guess she must have been working in the Indiantown area, and she came across the property, and she got in touch with Yashi, and I guess the price was right. And she said, "What do you think?" He said, "Buy it." And I guess they must have had another conversation along the same lines and came down to the same response, "Buy it." So I guess they bought it, and that was the beginning. I don't know whether they were looking to move here, but I guess she liked what she found down here, and the time was right. let's see, I think Anne would have been very proud that two of her granddaughters, Kiyomi's daughters, are now both at Smith. One was at Smith, and recently the second daughter, was also able to get into Smith. I think Anne would have been very, very pleased about that. I think she had projects. I don't want to demean their relationship, but I think Yashi might have been one of her projects. And I suspect that the books that I don't know whether that's at all true. And, I apologize to Anne if it is not true. But I have a feeling that she played quite a big role in encouraging Yashi to write all his books, which I got copies of, and I think I've read them all, which I love. I love the books, what they tell you about Tokyo. And one of the books purports to be speaking about a lady who played a role in the invention of a special treatment for gastrointestinal disorders, and it's not presented as by Yashi as his wife, but Anne later told me she was that person who played that role. I said, I suspected as much. Let me just, I hate to go on a long time. Okay, wait a minute. I'm going to have to find it. Wait a minute, just a second.
Well, let me take the mic, David, and if you find what you want to say, I'll pass it back after somebody else has had a chance.
Okay.
Does anybody else want to share a tribute or word? Yeah.
Those of you who came to the talent show in the last year, Anne, I think, was the last presenter, and hands down, she was the winner of the talent show. She stood up and told us all about her history with Yashi, her children, and on and on and on, and just was in her element at the talent show.
A storyteller par excellence. Anyone else? Jackie?
I never really got to spend a lot of time with Anne and Yashi because he was so quiet, but I wound up with the hymnal with their names in front. And so if you'd text me the numbers, I'd open it up and there would be their names, and it always brought me great joy. And I was invited by one congregant, and I meet so many people I couldn't even remember who it was, and said, Anne will be there, to 2J's, which is a Jewish deli locally, and not nearly as good as Cantor's or some of the places, so I hardly ever go there. And when I showed up and then Anne came, I thought, oh, that Anne. And we never talked about the fact that we had Judaism in common. We just looked at the food and we were like, try some of this potato latke. And on the way out, she took a little more time than I did, dragging my cello, and she looked at the chopped chicken liver and her eyes lit up. And whoever was with us, whoever invited me, went to get the car, and by the time she got in the car, I had bought chopped chicken liver for my sister and for Anne. And I handed it to her, and her face was just glowing, and that's, a great memory for me.
Some last thoughts?
Okay, I had written to Anne at the end of November via Kiyomi about, I guess they had just been back for Yoshi's / Yashi's memorial, and I was saying I'm sorry I missed her. So this was on November 28th. She said, Dear David, thank you for reaching out. I enjoyed our time together enormously, and I wish we could do it again. I always look forward to our Saturday morning get-togethers with tea or coffee. I appreciate our friendship, and I wish it could have gone on longer. I'm looking forward to hearing from you again. In love and friendship, Anne. Well, I think that's typical of what has been said here by many people already. And I think Kiyomi must be a very solid person as well. And I sent back Anne didn't respond to any more of texts that I sent via Kiyomi, but I was corresponding with Kiyomi primarily after that. And
One more thought, David, then we're going to move on, okay?
Kiyomi responded, I appreciate your text. I found it comforting. I welcome communication from you and anything you're willing to share at any time. So she's, Anne made a huge impact on her own children, I think.
And all her family, including us. Are you saying, Bill, you want?
Yeah, I wasn't actually going to say anything, but when Janet Grote spoke about Anne's generosity, not only in things she did here physically and participating in committees and things, but also financially, it reminded me of something that I was going to say that really transcends Anne, but it reminded me, and when somebody said about how a number of people about how Anne being important when they came here and they were new, that I found there were actually 2 women who were dominant forces, even though they were quite short. Anne Nozawa and Enid Johnson. One of whom chased me out to my car the first day I came here to visit because she didn't want me to get away, in quotes. But being in this room, I think this is worth sharing because I think most of you won't have this history, and I will be brief on this, I promise. I know David Gray will remember this quite well, and some of you who've been here for 10 years or so will remember this. When this sanctuary was built, not everybody was happy. You may find that hard to believe, but not everybody wanted this. This was a legacy gift given by people who were wealthy donors who had a big commitment to why this place should be here and why place matters. That's something I've talked about in here a number of times. Anne understood that. And when I was the president in my former iteration, when this, you'll remember this, when we got the plans from David Gregg and met with the architects and this building subsequently and the narthex were constructed. Anne took me aside before this went up. She said, I want to meet with you privately. When you're the president, you're like, oh God, okay, now what? Well, what she understood was not everybody was going to be on board with this. A lot of people were quite happy. They thought Heston Hall, that was fine, it was big enough, they could do everything they wanted to do in there. And she understood that this was going to be a little bit of a sales job to get people on board, and now here we are, and thankfully. So Anne was not only really just an engaging person, but a damn wise person, I would say. So, and a sweetheart.
One of a kind. On your point you raised, Bill, it wasn't you, but people asked me to go to the donors and ask them if you could just all hold the money until we were stronger. And the donor said, no, we're giving the money to build this place. So that's where we were. Anybody want a last word? Then we'll simply say, Anne is a keeper. She has helped a lot of us with our place in life and moving on in our place in life. And she's one of the people I hope to be like when I grow up, and hope to be more like as I continue growing up. God bless Anne. What was that?
You want to pass in Hawaii as well?
Well, I was willing to visit her if you would send me. I didn't get any takers on that. Are you wanting to say something? Oh, okay. But I said the hand go up. I don't want to miss anybody. All right, well, let's end by singing the song we know so well, but I've asked them to play for us. We don't have to hum it. We'll just sing it. Spirit of Life. Or do you want us to hum it once?
No, we'll do just a little intro so you know what note to start.
I like the word remember because it reminds me that we call many parts of ourselves members, and remembering means we're reattaching a part of ourselves in a new way. So Anne will certainly be someone that we remember in our fellowship here, as long as we remember at all. Go in peace. Thank you, folks. Do you get this back?
Sure, yes.
You can take the rest of the day.
Oh, thank you.
On this.